Permanent representative to the UN, Ambassador of India to the United Nations, is joining us live. Ruchira Kamboj, really appreciate your time, Ambassador, here on NDTV. How do you see the overall diplomatic efforts shaping international opinion, which is being taken over, as efforts being taken by India, particularly in the face of Pakistan's continued aggression and hostility, ma'am?
Well, good to see you, Maria. And let me say, in response to your question, at the very outset, I would say Pakistan has made our task simpler by openly admitting before the full glare of the international media that they are the financiers, they are the perpetrators, and they are the abettors of terrorism. And second, the political leadership of India, as we all know, has moved swiftly, engaging key foreign counterparts. The members of the United Nations Security Council seem to have been briefed in detail, and we saw the images in your show itself. And at the most recent informal meeting of the United Nations Security Council, Pakistan stood isolated. We all know that, with no outcome to show after that meeting. Their permanent representative, in fact, cut a solitary defensive figure at the media stakeout. And that image speaks louder than words, more than what you and I can say. So I would say, in short, you cannot defend the indefensible. And when you try, you end up exposing your own farce.
You can't defend the indefensible, Ruchira Kamboj, but that's what Pakistan has been doing for a very, very long time on the international forums. What do you think has changed? And also, do you think that because you can't defend the indefensible, you move down the rogue alley? You become more rogue for the world to take note of you. Is this what is happening with Pakistani behavior?
Oh, absolutely. But let me tell you something. The world has no tolerance for terror. Something has changed. That needle has moved. And you saw that in the recent meeting of the Security Council. Did Pakistan get any support? I ask you that. They did not. Did they get any outcome of that meeting? No. On the contrary, as we are told, they were grilled at that meeting. They were grilled for their role. The questions of accountability were raised. Several tough questions were posed. Nobody believed that narrative. And importantly, what about the United Nations Secretary General? He also unequivocally condemned the terror attack and demanded justice. And I don't believe anybody, no matter what you say, is buying into that rhetoric. So you cannot defend the indefensible. The world does not have any more appetite for terror.
The world does not have an appetite for terror, but does the world have an appetite for the kind of aggression that the Pakistanis are carrying out on our western frontiers now for at least close to 72 hours, Ms. Kamboj? Do you think that finally, the world opinion and the world friends of Pakistan like Saudi Arabia and United States also, as the world's sole superpower, would put an end to this completely uncalled for aggression and butchering of civilians en masse?
I agree with you. I agree with each and every word that you're saying. And in fact, you can use even stronger words. Well, it is always the hope and the aspiration that the world will condemn this, continue rather to condemn this in the strongest terms. Because today, terrorism has happened in India, but it is a transnational issue. It could happen in any part of the world tomorrow. And importantly, I think the message that India has sent is the most important message, that there must be zero tolerance. Terrorism is pure evil and it must not be countenanced at any cost. And if you recall, this has been India's principal position. I remember in 2022, when we chaired the United Nations Security Council Counter-Terrorism Committee, this was the same message that we had sent. We had adopted what is called the New Delhi Declaration now. And 2 months later, when we chaired the Security Council in December 2022, we had further worked upon the New Delhi Declaration. And once again, we had crafted a presidential statement, which was adopted despite the polarization of the times that we live in. So I do believe that the world feels very strongly about terror, which needs to be condemned in no unequivocal terms.
Only yesterday, in no uncertain terms, the Foreign Secretary rejected that demand by Pakistan for an open investigation to the incident of 22nd, the sense is that they use those dossiers which are provided by India, as it has happened in the past, to cover their track. Evidences are used to track what they have done. So do you see that international organizations will ever rise to hold Pakistan accountable for these acts of terrorism?
Well, let's put it this way, and I've already answered the question. Terrorism is transnational. I don't think the pain that we feel today, that pain is ours alone. Few nations, Maria, few nations remain untouched by the scourge of terror today. Even United Nations peacekeepers, I recall, symbols of international cooperation, have been targeted in volatile theaters where terrorism and insurgency blur dangerously. We all know that. So I honestly feel that the world no longer has patience for excuses. There is no more appetite for shielding terror. The UNSC has also condemned this act in no uncertain terms and called for accountability and justice. That in itself is a powerful reflection of the global support we have received through our effort in recent days and weeks and in the past as well. But I think you have raised a very important, deeper point, and I would like to answer that. The role of international organizations is now at the proverbial inflection point. Unless we reform the system, bring in a greater diversity of voices, particularly from the global south, and address the opaque working methods of the Security Council, including the misuse of the veto, we risk going back to ground zero. Only a more representative and responsive multilateral system can truly deliver justice and security in today's world.
And Pakistan's all-weather friend China has that veto and has used that veto on multiple occasions to favor Pakistan. Now, the problem, Ms. Kamboj, possibly is that one is the lack of representative character of the multilateral organizations, and second is that while the world says that it has no appetite for terror, but countries like Pakistan, which have been repeatedly not only over the years, over the decades, proven to be the epicenter of global terror, have actually never been hauled over coals, have actually never been punished enough by the international bodies, or you can say multilateral institutions. And after some time, every time it is possibly business as usual, that they continue to get emboldened.
Yes, that's right. I agree with you. You're not entirely wrong. But we always will have to go back to the heart of the matter. Why is this happening? Because the institutional governance, the structures are not functioning optimally. We need new voices on the table. We need a council that is more representative so that this does not happen that easily. And why do you say that they are getting away with impunity? They have been. But at the same time, if that was the case, the informal meeting of the UN Security Council would have been a victory for Pakistan. But it wasn't. In fact, it was a dramatic failure for them. So while they have got away with quite a bit in the past, but at the same time, the world does recognize them for what they are. And at the end of the day, what is the United Nations? The United Nations is the sum total of its member states. So the member states also have to have the will to act. And I think that is where Indian diplomacy, our political leadership has been so very active, and we shall continue to do that.
Ruchira Kamboj, really appreciate your time here on NDTV. Thank you, ma'am, for your time here. We are slipping into a short break, and coming up would be another exclusive interview with another former ambassador, so stay tuned.